The events in this program are inspired by a true story. Names, dates, and details have been changed. Viewer discretion is advised.
Town sweetheart goes missing and everyone is a suspect. Could it be the married man she was seeing on the side? The irate customer who won't take no for an answer? And why is her brother being so helpful? When every new avenue leads to a dead end, police will have to put this puzzle together piece by piece. Appleton, Wisconsin, 2007. Gloria McLean had long been Appleton's pride and joy. Having spent the majority of her childhood on a semi-popular 1990s sitcom, she was as close to celebrity as many in her town would ever encounter. After her stardom faded, Gloria returned to Appleton to attempt a new life. She graduated from school with top honors and eventually settled into a new job running the loans department of the Appleton Savings Bank. Even when her life was going at a meager pace, she continued to be the favored daughter of her town. So, everyone in Appleton was quick to notice when Gloria went missing.
When somebody who's very loved in a community goes missing, it's not surprising that people want to come out and help, and they come out in droves. But the problem you have with that is that sometimes they're not doing things that the police would actually have them do, and it causes more problems than it does help.
After 2 nights of Gloria's absence at home, her brother Paul McLean files a missing persons report to the local authorities. Paul McLean managed to be everything that Gloria was not. After a prank on his sister went horribly wrong, Paul sustained a back injury that made his confidence take a nosedive. He could no longer play sports, and school did not come easy for him. He began to isolate himself, obsessing over Japanese anime, and spending his free time testing new combinations of sodas. Knowing he was the ridicule of the town, Paul sought to prove everyone wrong by attending the local community college, but at a much more deliberately slow pace. Since Gloria and Paul's parents died, the two have lived in the old family house. Gloria always worried about her brother's financial state, and since the house had already been paid off, it was easier for the two to just continue living there. Until Paul graduated college, of course. Paul reports Gloria missing with great concern and distress. When asked if he knows of anyone who might kidnap his sister, he responds with one name: Darren Tooley.
Anytime anybody goes missing, the first thing detectives are going to focus on is that person's inner circle. The second thing they're going to do is try to whittle down the list of suspects. But Darren is not going to get marked off this list.
Detective Diana Cox leads the case and begins turning her attention towards Darren Tooley. Police learn that Darren is an artist and local celebrity, often found painting in the middle of the town park. Darren has also been married to his wife, Jonah, for 10 years. She's a real estate agent, and recently, she and Darren have not been seen together in public for quite some time. Now detectives understand why that is. Paul believes Darren has been having an affair with Gloria. While Detective Cox began tracking down Darren Tooley, Paul starts making missing person flyers to help find his sister. Police are skeptical of Paul's efforts. The town has long considered Gloria and Paul's relationship a rocky one. Paul's guilt at holding his sister back only amplifies the fact that he constantly lives in Gloria's shadow. It's difficult to tell if Paul is doing this out of love for his sibling or just a familial obligation. Detective Cox arrives early to Darren Tooley's house and finds his wife, Joanna, relatively at peace, as though she is entirely unaware of the possibility her husband could be cheating on her. Joanna tells Detective Cox that Darren was headed towards Gordon Bullboy's nature preserve, but that's not out of the ordinary for him.
If you have a friend who comes up to you and says, "I need to disappear without a trace for a long period of time," raise the red flag if it hasn't already been raised for you. That's strange. And Darren decides that he has to do that. I bet he's finding some pretty good inspiration elsewhere, don't you think?
Detective Cox sets out for Gordon Bullboy's nature preserve, but she finds that Darren is not listed among the campers at the park's registration. She returns to the station with a new idea. She goes through Gloria's credit card payment history as well as her recent phone calls, but there is nothing out of the ordinary that Cox finds worthwhile to investigate. Later that day, Paul McLean returns to the station after one of his classes to infer how the investigation is going. Detective Cox gives him the only theory she can compose. She believes that Gloria and Darren have likely run off together. She explains that with no evidence, no body, and no witnesses, it is difficult to assess whether Gloria ran away or was kidnapped.
When you're dealing with the family of a missing person, the amount of information you give them is critical. Nobody needs to remind Paul what the other option is.
It's gonna be all right.
Paul becomes visibly upset, claiming that Gloria would never run away so long as she had to take care of him while he was getting through college. Detective Cox does her best to control Paul's explosive temper and tells him to continue trying to call Gloria over the next few days. Paul leaves disgruntled, but not at a complete loss. Later that day, Detective Cox receives a call from someone in Memorial Park claiming that they found a suspicious package that they believe police should investigate. Police arrive on the scene to discover a sizable suitcase lying near a large electrical tower in River Creek. Carefully, they pop it open, only to find a sight that sickens them to their stomachs. Detective Cox pops open the lid of the suitcase and finds a woman's naked torso. After they recover from the ghastly sight, they quickly bring in the body to test it for fingerprints or some kind of identification, but they find neither. With no security cameras surveilling the area, police question nearby witnesses, but nobody claims to have seen who dropped off the suitcase, and many note the smell kept most of them from even approaching it. Police then ask if they know who it was that called them to the scene, but no one steps forward claiming they did so.
0.
Detective Cox warrants a search of Gloria and Paul's home, hoping to find either DNA evidence or something else to give them a lead. But when Cox arrives, she discovers that all of Gloria's suitcases are gone, and that the entire house has been cleaned from top to bottom, except for Paul's room, which is a total mess. Paul tells Cox that Gloria was a neat freak, and the week before she disappeared, she spent nearly all her time spring cleaning the entire house, but he didn't let her touch his room. Cox is astounded as she's unable to find any DNA that could possibly help identify if the torso in the suitcase belonged to Gloria or not. They search her bathroom for toiletries but found that they have been cleared out. Cox asked Paul if he ever saw her packing her suitcase, but Paul claims he never saw anything that would suggest she was going traveling.
Detectives have just found a torso in a suitcase. This is either somebody who's too good at faking their own death, or it's a murder victim. They have, obviously, the torso's DNA, but there's no match with any database, so they have no idea who this person was.
Not wanting the investigation stalled, Paul tells Detective Cox that he remembers hearing his sister complaining about a customer she had at the bank. The customer was screaming at the top of his lungs and making a big scene. Detective Cox visits Gloria's bank and pulls up a list of customers that she had previously denied loans to. There she finds the name of Tim Sparks and calls his cell phone number.
Hello, it's Tim.
Tim, a repentant con man with a history of business scams, answers, and Cox asks him about his involvement in a scene in the bank just a week ago with Gloria McLean. Tim is surprised to be asked about the incident. Detective Cox asks him if he would be willing to come down to the police station for an interview.
Yeah, that's a problem. Currently, I'm unable to move or walk.
When Cox presses as to why, Tim explains that after he exploded on Gloria in the bank, he was so angry on his drive home that he got into a massive car wreck that broke both of his legs. He says he will be in the hospital for a few weeks and will be unable to drive due to his broken legs and lack of car. Cox looks up Tim's medical records from the nearby hospital to discover that his story is true.
What they thought was a break in the case turned out to be just another dead end. If this guy was in the hospital the day after his fight with Gloria, how can he be responsible for her disappearance? I mean, look at the guy. He's got broken legs. He's got no mobility. He can't drive. He could have nothing to do with it. And if he had dumped it in the park, somebody might have noticed a hospital bed.
Then another anonymous call comes in with a new tip. A new suitcase has arrived in Memorial Park. Detective Cox finds the suitcase on the other side of the park under a tree, a long shot away from where they found the torso. Preparing for the worst, police open the case, rearing back at the sickening smell of two arms cut off at the shoulders. Cox is quick to get the parts to the lab as they have to make sure that the arms are a match with the torso they found days earlier.
No prints could be taken because whoever did this burned the fingerprints off. The first thing you want to do, though, is match that arm to that torso, because if they don't match, you don't have one dead body, you have parts of two.
A blood match confirms that the arms and the leg do, in fact, belong to the torso discovered days before, but the question of who the torso belongs to still hangs in the air. To make matters worse, police have still been unable to find Darren Tooley, who is now the investigation's only notable suspect. As Detective Cox is about to head home for the evening, she is stopped by a man who has just entered the police station. He said that he desperately needs to speak with police, and he's carrying a suitcase. The man in the police station identifies himself as Darren Tooley, the man police assume is having an affair with Gloria McCain. Darren claims he just got back from an artistic journey in the wilderness and that when he returned home, a suitcase was waiting on his doorstep. He says he has not yet opened the suitcase, but his wife told him to immediately come to the police station in order to clear things up. Detective Cox interrogates Darren while her forensic team analyzes the suitcase. When they open it, they discover a leg that is cut off at the hip. In the interrogation room, Darren repeats his claim that he was waltzing around in the wilderness the past week. and that he hadn't talked to Gloria in nearly a month.
Darren's alibi is convenient. In fact, it's too convenient. Try walking into a police station and telling the detective I couldn't have been involved in the murder because I was out alone in nature getting inspiration. This is the look you'll see on the detective's face.
To get an interrogative advantage, Detective Cox has her team bring in the contents of Darren's suitcase. Darren is appalled to see the body parts and immediately turns pale white. His story quickly changes. Darren admits that he wasn't in the wilderness the past week, but he also didn't kill or kidnap anyone. He had spent the last week living with a different girlfriend at her apartment in Chicago. He claims he broke up with Gloria a month before because he was worried she would find out about his new girlfriend and that Gloria would tell his wife, Joanna, about his many affairs.
It's a very damning story, but not anything beyond what someone would say to get out of prison for murder. I'm just going to give you one word: corroboration. Somebody's got to corroborate it.
Okay, I'll even give you a number.
Darren gives Cox the phone number of his Chicago girlfriend, Rebecca. Detective Cox calls Rebecca and is told that Darren's story is true. But Detective Cox wants more evidence. Anyone can have a friend lie for you. She asks if Darren has a receipt for his plane ticket, but Darren gets quiet.
You're seeing another girl.
Darren explains that a different girlfriend bought him the plane ticket to Chicago.
This is unbelievable. I mean, how many girlfriends does this guy have? I can imagine the police are probably in there saying, I hope it's this guy, because I want to put this sleazeball away.
Detective Cox allows Darren to call his third girlfriend, and an email receipt of his plane ticket is sent to Cox's account.
You can go.
Yeah.
With another lead effectively flushed down the toilet, detectives are stumped at where to turn next. They decide to set their sights on the only other person they believe could be involved: Gloria's brother, Paul.
Looking for my sister Gloria, who's still missing.
Detective Cox finds Paul out about town, making a video plea for the people of Appleton to be on the lookout for Gloria. In his arms, missing flyers that have been stapled all over. Paul explains to Detective Cox that he has been putting up flyers after class every day. Detective Cox asks Paul if he would be willing to come in and answer a few more questions.
I don't understand why can't you just ask me here?
I can have.
Paul flips into a rage. He screams that no one is taking him seriously and that interrogating him is a waste of time and resources. In his anger, he throws down the flyers. Detective Cox becomes even more suspicious about Paul's outburst.
It's not normal for an innocent person to flip out when they're asked to assist in an investigation. And when that happens, it raises a red flag.
Detective Cox finally manages to convince Paul to come in for questioning, though Paul says he will only do so if he is allowed to drop off his things at home. Cox reassures him that his personal possessions will be just fine as she leads him to her cruiser. As they enter the station, Paul asks if his bag will be searched, as is the usual protocol at a police station. But Detective Cox says she will let it slide this once, hoping to gain his trust back. Detective Cox instructs another detective to take the bag into the evidence room, but not to open it until she gets permission from Paul, because she needs a warrant to do so on her own. In the interrogation room, Paul is visibly nervous and shaken. Cox recalls that every time she has seen Paul, he has been dragging his backpack behind him. Paul confirms that he has a rolling backpack due to his back injury, and every time he has seen Detective Cox, it has been after he has finished up a class. But Detective Cox brings up something that Paul hadn't mentioned when she was visiting their house. The past week was also the local community college's spring break, meaning that he was lying. Paul turns pale white. Detective Cox asks Paul if he's hiding anything in the bag he has been carrying around. With a heavy sigh, Paul agrees to allow the forensic team to look through his backpack. Detective Cox gives them the go-ahead to check the bag that Paul has been guarding so suspiciously. The forensic team opens Paul's bag to find a terrible sight. Gloria McCain's head.
Hey, I did it.
Paul confesses the people of Appleton knew the bright side of Gloria, but they didn't know her dark side, and that she was prone to violent outbursts. The night of her disappearance, she came home from work and flew into a rage, blaming Paul that he was the reason Darren dumped her.
You ruined my freaking life, Paul. Seriously. Darren left me. Mom and Dad are dead. I have nothing but you.
She claimed that Paul was responsible for everything horrible in her life, and even leered out and smacked Paul across the face. In his own fit of rage, Paul struck his sister in the back of her head, killing her. Instantly regretting his actions, he cut her body up and placed them in old suitcases, dropping them off around the town and at Darren's house, hoping to implicate him as the real murderer.
Every once in a while, a case is so bizarre, so unreal, so inhuman, that it shows once again that truth is stranger than fiction.